Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two buckets of clarification. One, with regard to the standards of the PAP that Prime Minister spoke of, and second, with regard to the circumstances involving the departure of former Speaker Tan Chuan-Jin and Cheng Hui. So there has been much public disquiet about the transmission of information surrounding Minister Iswaran's arrest by the CPIB, and separately on the affair between Speaker Tan Chuan-Jin and MP Cheng Hui. This is particularly with regard to what the Prime Minister knew and what the Prime Minister did about it over a period of almost 3 years before coming clean on the matter. So in this term of government, the government has either been slow to clear the air or been less than upfront and forthright with Singaporeans when it had to deal with potentially embarrassing issues. I will give 3 examples that capture this point, and my clarifications will be contained therein. Firstly, in May this year, the public was not informed forthwith that CPIB had been instructed to look into the ride-out road rentals by 2 ministers. On the 23rd of May, the Prime Minister released a statement stating SM Teo Hsien had been appointed to establish whether there had been any wrongdoing in the ride-out road rentals in order to maintain the highest standards of integrity in government. What the Prime Minister did not tell the public, but was made known by way of a statement from the Prime Minister's office written in the third person on the 28th of June, was that the Prime Minister had directed the CPIB to investigate the ride-out road matter on the 17th of May, a full 6 days before his 23rd May statement, that omitted to mention that he had ordered a CPIB investigation into 2 of his ministers. The public came to know about the CPIB investigation more than a month later when the investigations were completed, with CPIB confirming no criminal offence was disclosed. Second, there is considerable public disquiet about the CPIB releasing a statement on the 12th of July which stated that Minister Iswaran was assisting with investigations while omitting to disclose the fact that Minister Iswaran had been arrested a day before. In a parallel universe, there is a perception that if a Singaporean or a Singaporean company took such a cavalier and breezy approach with critical facts under today's PAP, they can expect to receive a POFMA direction from a PAP minister for perpetuating false statements of facts. Has the Prime Minister inquired with the CPIB why it undertook such a course of action that brought unnecessary attention to the CPIB's processes and by extension even its impartiality involving the release of statements in the public interest? And if he did not, would he consider to do so? Thirdly, during COVID-19, the public was belatedly informed by a minister in this House that his senior cabinet colleagues were aware by October 2020 that previous government assurances on Trace Together being solely used for contact tracing were effectively false statements of fact. Misrepresentations had hitherto been made by various government ministers and possibly in this House even before October 2020. And they stood uncorrected for months. The PAP government took almost 9 months before it disclosed to Singaporeans that the Singapore Police Force sought to collect Trace Together data for an investigation in May 2020, even as the PAP continued to assert right through the rest of the year that Trace Together was only to be used for contact tracing. Unlike as represented by the PM, these are not events that I quote are clustered together, all coming at one go. Instead, they reveal a pattern of behavior over a period of time of the PAP engaging in half-truths on matters of significant public interest. And this behavior goes a long way to explain why there is real disquiet among Singaporeans today when the PAP invokes the memory of pioneer generation PAP leaders and talks about trust. So last month, the PM informed this House that he has to set the standards of what is ethical and what is proper, and that the PAP government does not need an ethics advisor. Can I invite the Prime Minister to reconsider his position in view of the PAP's pattern of behavior in this term of government, especially when a potentially embarrassing issue comes up? I would like to suggest to the Prime Minister, in view of the complexity of government and governance today, it would not be embarrassing for the government to consider the appointment of an ethics advisor. So my clarifications on the Cheng Hui and Speaker Tan Chuan-Jin matter are as follows. The Prime Minister said, in comparing the hot mic issue with the inappropriate relationship, that, I quote, in comparison, the relationship was the more serious matter, as he was the Speaker and she was an MP and there should not be a relationship, unquote. My question is, if the Prime Minister knew of the affair in 2020, why were Speaker Tan and Cheng Hui allowed to be on the same standing select committee of Parliament, namely the House Committee, after GE 2020 when the Prime Minister was already aware of the affair? wouldn't their being on the same committee have resulted in more interactions between them than necessary, or given official reasons to be together? And to this end, has the Prime Minister checked, since he knew of the affair in 2020, how many foreign trips have both Speaker Tan Chuan-Jin and Cheng Liu have been on at the taxpayers' expense, and was he not aware of them? My next question. Prime Minister stated at the press conference in response to a reporter's question that, I quote, "As for comparison with Michael Palmer, I think it depends on the situation of the case. And I said you've got to look at the circumstances, spouses, the family's condition, and how you manage this as sensitively as you can and yet do your duty. And it depends on the person's response as well as the specifics. So I don't think it's possible to make direct comparisons," unquote. I note the PM's reference to such sensitivity and eminently reasonable approach to take with delicate matters. However, the PAP selectively applies these standards, expecting Singaporeans to give the PAP the full benefit of doubt when its MPs foul up, while screaming blue murder when the opposition seek to make the same point. When former WP MP Raeesah Khan revealed to the WP leaders that she was a rape victim, sensitivity was not even considered by the Committee of Privileges in accounting for the delay in addressing Raeesah's lies to Parliament. And the Prime Minister did not bat an eyelid in giving the leader of the opposition a sermon on Confucian ethics, morality and shame, even though at the material time he would have been aware of the affair between Speaker Tan Chuan-Jin and MP Cheng Liu. Can the Prime Minister please elaborate how the Tan Chuan-Jin affair with an MP was different from the circumstances and conditions of former PAP Speaker Michael Palmer's affair with a People's Association member, which Senior Minister Teo Chee Hean then had said had to be dealt with, I quote, decisively. Finally, why was there a need for so much time to plan for the care of Marine Parade and specifically Kembangan Chai Chee residents? In other cases of resignations of PAP MPs, such as Michael Palmer, President Halima, David Ong and Senior Minister Tharman, nothing close to that length of time was required. Could the Prime Minister detail for us what exact steps were taken between February and July 2023 to arrange for the care of Marine Parade residents? If that was the crux of the issue, then even if the planning for the care of Marine Parade residents was a proper justification for Tan Chuan-Jin to remain a Marine Parade MP for 5 months, why was he not asked to step down as Speaker first and a new Speaker elected? If he had stepped down as Speaker, could he still not have continued as a Marine Parade MP until the arrangements were made? And before I round off, Mr. Speaker, just one additional question. How were Tan Chuan-Jin and Cheng Liu counselled immediately after PM was informed about the affair in 2020? Did he personally counsel them? And how often did he check in on the status of the relationship thereafter? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, let me deal first with the question of transmission of information. The Leader of the Opposition raises 3 issues, one of which has been extensively debated, in fact, in 2020 during COVID, and I don't need to go back there again, which is the trace together and whether we should have announced earlier when we discovered that the police were using it for their purposes. I think that has been completely explained, closed. That matter is done. As for CPIB statements, the CPIB doesn't investigate somebody unless there is a very serious reason to do so. And the CPIB doesn't reveal that investigation generally until it has reason to believe that this investigation has to carry on, that it has to go somewhere. Therefore, in general, CPIB investigations are not in the first instance announced at all. If you had listened to Minister Tan Chuan-Singh, you would have heard that explained very clearly why, in general, the CPIB doesn't announce any investigations at all. And when I ask the CPIB to investigate, it's my prerogative. I don't have to tell anybody. What is important is that I did conduct an investigation, and the investigation results were published. That is what matters. In the case of the 12th July statement, the reason why the CPIB said exactly what they said If you listen carefully to Minister Tan Chuan-Jin, that explanation has been given, which was that they had to say what they felt justified in saying at that point for operational reasons and to be fair to the persons involved, and the ministers, unless we have strong reason to do otherwise, will go along and we will not go beyond what the CPIB needs and is able to see. So I think in terms of transmission of information, we are pursuing a red herring. We could equally well ask, for example, when did the Leader of Opposition know about problems in his party, and what did he do about them? But those are matters which the Workers' Party will have to decide and will have to account to Singaporeans. And the PAP, we establish our own standards and we establish our own practices. As for the relationship between Tan Chuan-Jin and Cheng Hui and the questions on the House Committee and foreign trips, I think I will leave that to Leader to answer subsequently. On the difference between this case and the case of Michael Palmer and the PA staff, I think there are two differences. One, in Michael Palmer's case, it involved the PA staff who worked in a team which supported Michael Palmer and other GRA advisors in Pasir Ris Punggol GRC, subsequently Pasir Ris Punggol GRC and Punggol East SMC. And there is a reporting relationship there. Secondly, I think the specifics of the extramarital affair matter. As I explained just now, we have to look at how the families respond, what the other circumstances are, and that differs in every case. And I do not wish to go into specifics of how the EMAs are different, but I suffice to say they were different. As for Raeesah Khan, that raises many issues, and those issues have been exhaustively debated in the Committee of Privileges. The matter, further problems were recorded and reported by the Committee of Privileges, and the matter has been referred to the police for investigations. So I would leave that to the police to pursue the matter and take it where it may. As for the time why it took so long, I counseled Tan Chuan-Jin at the beginning. I saw to it that Cheng Hui was also counseled at the beginning. They both agreed to stop. It didn't happen. I do not wish to go beyond that and to delve into the ins and outs of how it happened, but suffice it to say, eventually it came to a break point and they didn't stop and they had to go. I could have done it sooner. I should have done it sooner. I have explained that. Marine parade was a consideration, but all things considered, I should have moved earlier. But the important thing is we moved. And we brought it out, and we were open about it. And when I was asked, I said, yes, I knew sometime after GE20, which is November 2020. I was open about it. If I hadn't said that, nobody would know that. And therefore, we clear the matter, and I think we account to Singaporeans.